It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine?
Let me say this first. I have a 4.5-year-old son who has recently discovered all the old show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and discovered you. So what's that like for you? I mean, you've been doing this for a number of years. It's multi-generational. How's that been for you?
Oh, that's why I like coming to these Comic Cons, because I'm meeting people who are now in their early 50s who grew up with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and it's wonderful to hear all the stories. And now your son, who's 4 years old, all those generations. It's been a wonderful weekend just meeting people. So I love that.
Why do you think it is? Why do you think it's so long-lasting?
I think it's evergreen. The Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Fred wrote his own material, and he put in subjects that really pertain to that age group, child development. He studied child development, and it was developed for preschool children. Like he's dealt with every subject, like sibling rivalry, going to school for the first time. We forget about all of those, but I think every generation needs that. And I think that, plus, I think Fred's manner of speaking right to the camera, and he respected children, respected childhood, and I think they picked that up. And I think that's the longevity of it. I always compare it to, also, for longevity, Wizard of Oz. It has a delightful whimsy to it also, along with the heavy child development in it. So all of that, I think, makes it an iconic program.
You know what I've noticed about it as a parent now, especially of a parent as a child who watches other shows, the pacing, slower. It's more. It seems like it's more specific, and it's something. I'm wondering if you have an opinion on whether or not the children's programming today is a little maybe too hectic, we'll say?
Oh, it always has been. Yeah. Fred Rogers did it deliberately. For that age group, children learn more when you're very, not slow, but paceful, I guess the word is. But, Fred always said that he'll ask a question, do you like this truck, whatever, and he'll pause. That gives the child some reflection time to think about what was said rather than just going on to the next subject. What Fred Rogers did with television was really groundbreaking because he took the pace and adapted it for his audience, a preschool audience, not for a 12-year-old that can handle a faster-paced show. I think shows for younger children today are very fast-paced, and they move on to different subjects. And a young child needs that calmness and reassurance. And Fred was sort of the conduit for that, too. Right. And I loved working on the program. I not only did Mr. McFeely for all these years, but I was in charge of public relations, and I was in charge of getting some of the props. So my jobs have changed, but I've always done Mr. McFeely. A little trivia. Do you want a little trivia? McFeely is Mr. Rogers' middle name, Fred McFeely Rogers, and his grandfather was the real Mr. McFeely. His name was Brooks McFeely. That was his grandfather's name, and he named the character because he wrote his own scripts, and he wrote his own music, and he did the puppets' voices. I'll show you a puppet, okay? His name is X the Owl. And on our new program called Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, X has a son whose name is O the Owl. But that's X the Owl, one of the ones we used on the neighborhood, and I've been showing it to people here at Comic Con. But he did the voices. They're very simple puppets, and he wanted children to use their imagination. He didn't want the puppet to do all the work. That was encouraging creativity was a big part of his mission. For using television that way. Anyhow, that's X the Owl.
Now, you mentioned Daniel Tiger, also one of my son's favorite show. Again, it's a refreshing pace. The co-creator of Blue's Clues worked on it with the Fred Rogers Foundation.
Yes.
I just want to say, it's a fabulous show, and I think it really honors the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Oh, you're right, it does. The pace for animation is much slower than regular animation, although it's a little faster than Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, because Fred could control the pace. With animation, you have to go a little faster, but what it does, It's in 25 countries now. Did you know that?
No.
Canada, and it's in Germany and Switzerland and Australia and other countries. But it's easier to dub than it is a live action program. So the neighborhood has widened internationally. But Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was too. It was in Canada. And it's still on Netflix in the States.
Sure.
Oh, you're from the States.
Yeah.
You're from Buffalo.
Buffalo.
Do you know something? My first plane trip that I ever had when I was a kid, about 8 years old, we came on Capital Airlines, which then became U.S. Air and now American. We flew to Buffalo. My grandparents brought me to the falls. I still have pictures in black and white of my trip to the American Falls, and I've never forgotten that trip. I see the hotel. I don't know if it's even there anymore. But Buffalo was my first city to visit, and the falls. So that you bring all of that back.
Very nice.
Here I am again, almost in Buffalo.
Last question for you. Now, PBS has recently made the production of Sesame Street.
Yes.
Was brought over to HBO.
Yes.
With reruns running on PBS down the line.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not directly related to what you've done, but people are saying that might be the final nail in the coffin for public broadcasting. I was wondering what your opinion is on it.
Oh, I don't think it is. I think it could have been for Sesame, because it's very expensive to produce Sesame Street, and I think now the HBO version will be a half hour, which will reduce the cost. But HBO is a benefactor, I think, of PBS. They're keeping Sesame Street alive, which it needs to be kept alive. And so then HBO will show their half-hour versions first, which is fair. They're paying for it all. And then kids will see it on public television. In the meantime, the reruns of Sesame will be on PBS. I think PBS will be around for a long time. We need PBS. We need it. If it weren't, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was one of the first programs on PBS, the first children's program. And it's still on in the States, by the way. It's on Netflix, and it's on Amazon, and it's on PBS Kids. So Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is available anytime you want to see it. And you said your son is what?
Yeah.
Your son?
Yeah, my son, yeah.
What's his name?
His name is Harrison.
Hi, Harrison. Speedy Delivery, talking to your dad. Thank you for joining our neighborhood. And look at the camera. I'm going to count to 3, and we're both going to say Speedy Delivery.
Okay.
And your viewers can too. So I'm going to count to 3. Viewers, say Speedy Delivery. We will too. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Speedy Delivery.
I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you.